Hi everybody, coming to you today from my hotel room here in this place. 10 points if you can pronounce it. It's Cirencester in southwest England. Now today I want to talk about how to actually learn English. Now I imagine if you're listening to this and you can understand what I'm saying, then you can speak English to a certain level, but maybe you're stuck at that level. Now, today I want to talk about the strategies that you need to get to the next level, because the techniques and the strategies, the learning that you've done to get to this level might not be the same as what you need to get to the next level. You might have your level that you've got from either leftovers from school, watching the occasional YouTube learn English video, maybe one of the apps like Duolingo or something like that. Okay, but those strategies might not be enough to get you to the next level. If you want to really improve your English and level up, then you need to take it seriously and dedicate some serious study time to it, which you may or may not be doing. But today I want to give you some tips on how you can make the most of that study time to hit each of the key skills, some of which you might be neglecting. So stick around. I'm going to talk about reading, writing, speaking and listening. First of all, I would say if you do want to level up, you need to get organized, block out some time. I know it's difficult to find an hour a day. You've got a busy life. I'm sure you've got a job or studies, responsibilities, hobbies, other things that you either want to do or have to do other than studying English. But if you don't make the time for this, you're never going to find the time for it. So if it's valuable to you, try and block out some time and say, that's my 30 minutes or 60 minutes a day that I'm going to dedicate to learning English. But what should you be doing in that time? Let's talk about the reading skill first. One of the most enjoyable and rewarding options to practice your reading skill is to read a book. And this can be fiction or non-fiction, whatever really that you're interested in, but probably fiction might tap in more into the enjoyment side of things, which is an important factor if you want to develop a reading habit. Now that you've got your book, you can read it in a number of ways. One way that you could read it is what I call passively. Now this is, you'll sit down, you put your feet up, you get a cup of tea, and you'll start to read to absorb the information. You're understanding, you're practicing your English, but you're not stopping every few minutes to look up words, write notes and study. You might write the occasional note or underline the occasional word to return to, but you're not going to let that stopping and starting to actually study the text interrupt the flow of the reading. It's the type of reading you do more for enjoyment, and it's great because you can absorb a large volume of texts. You're going through it a lot faster at that kind of pace. For this to be effective, the text needs to be at an appropriate level. I'd aim for, on a standard page of a book, maybe 5 or 6, maybe up to 10 words that you're not sure of on the page, but from the context, there's enough that you do understand so that you can infer the meaning of the surrounding words that you're not sure of. The alternative method of reading is a much more active study style of reading. That's where you'll sit down, maybe at a desk, with your book, pad, pen, dictionary maybe, or Google Translate. Realistically, you might find a word that you're not sure of. You'll stop, look it up, write the definition, maybe study the pronunciation of the word. We'll talk more about that later. You might come across a more challenging grammatical structure. You might say, is that the past perfect, or is that reported speech? I'll make a note of that. And you might either make a note of it and study it and look into it there and then, or make a note and come back to it when you're going to study more grammar points, and make a point to return to it then. And it doesn't have to be a book, it could be any sort of text really, newspaper, article, magazine article, online, text, blogs, that sort of thing. There are also loads of reading comprehension resources online. Things like the Cambridge PET or the Cambridge IELTS tests have practice papers where you can read the text from the exams, do the practice questions, and check to see if you understood the text, check your answers against the marking scheme. The next skill I want to talk about is listening. Now, you need to be doing a lot of listening. When I was studying other languages, I listened to a lot of music anyway, but it was the one thing that really got me in the zone, really tuned in to my target language. I'd listen to all kinds of styles of music in the language that I was trying to learn, not just when I was studying, but throughout the day. But when I was studying as well, I'd have that music on, maybe lower in the background if I'm not specifically listening to it. But I found that exposure to the sounds really helpful. But not only the sounds, I think you get something from the music that gets you into sort of gives you a feel for the cultural elements as well, or it can give you a taste of the culture that sort of clicks you into the mood of learning that language. So I found that particularly useful, and I would recommend it to you. And the good news is, if you're learning English, there's so much good music that's come out of the English speaking world. Not the case so much for all of the other languages. Some have better musical offerings than others, but at least with English, you can't go wrong really. There's so much to choose from. Podcasts, films, and series are also an amazing resource for your listening, and you can consume as much as you want of those type of programs as well. Now, as we talked about with the reading skill, you can also listen on that scale or spectrum of active to passive. You can have music on in the background and listen really passively, not paying particular attention to the words and the lyrics. On the other end of the scale, you can get your pen and paper out, and if it's a song, you can transcribe the lyrics. You might have to pause, listen carefully, write down what you hear. You might have to repeat that numerous times until you sort of can catch what they're saying. Sometimes it'll just be impossible because, I'm sure even in your own language, sometimes you're like, what are they saying at that bit of the song? And it's just impossible. So don't get really hung up on particular lyrics. If you can't get it, then look it up. And sometimes after you look it up, it's like, oh, that's what they say. And after you know what they say, then it's really clear. And you can do that with anything really. Same for if you prefer TV series or films, you can transcribe dialogues and get your pen, paper, write it down, pause, repeat, write down exactly what the actors are saying. And as with the reading, you can also access the online tests for the listening sections. So things like the IELTS, there are practice tests online, quite easy to find on Cambridge website, or Google IELTS practice tests. You can listen to the audio tracks, and there's comprehension questions, so you can identify areas where you need to practice. And if you're struggling with any questions, again, try transcribing it yourself before you check the official transcript and fill in the gaps of where you couldn't quite catch what they were saying. So reading and listening are the comprehension skills. That's about how well you can absorb the information, the language that somebody else has produced. But I think the production skills, that's writing and speaking, are much more difficult. And that's because it just takes more effort to produce something than it does to absorb something. But with great effort comes great reward. And I think the production skills, that's writing and speaking, especially writing, is an area that lots of English learners neglect and don't get the massive benefits that are available if you dedicate a bit more effort to your writing and speaking practice. And I think if you invest, let's say 30 minutes or an hour a day in the writing skill, you can 10x your results. Now, if you have a decent intermediate level of English, you can probably understand this text I'll put on the screen. If I hadn't seen this video, I wouldn't have realised that writing was so important. Now, you can probably read that or listen to that and understand it, but if I'd said to you, tell me what you think about this video, would you have been able to form that structure? It's much more difficult. Let's put it back together. So you'd have to put the if and the I with hadn't, because there's a third conditional there, so we're describing something in the past that didn't happen, plus I wouldn't, plus had, or haven't, or have, or been. See, it's more difficult when you haven't just got it all laid out in front of you. You have to put the sentence together. Much more difficult when you have to actually produce something. And be honest, you don't practice your writing as much as you practice your reading, your listening, and your watching of English YouTube videos, do you? You sit down and you say, right, I'm going to practice my English. And then you go and listen to 3 hours of Taylor Swift and binge watch a series on Netflix. I know writing is a big effort, but don't worry, I've got some tips that'll have you writing in no time. And for the first one, you don't even have to put your phone down. We're going to write more comments on YouTube videos. So I have a confession. I watch a lot of YouTube, but I'm not really a big commenter. In fact, up until very recently, I didn't write any comments at all. I love watching videos and I love reading other people's comments, but I just never really took the next step to give my own thoughts and comments on anything, even channels that I was a big fan of. I'd watch hours and hours of videos, read all of the comments. I never commented, never responded to anything. But more recently, I have started to do it, and I'm really pleasantly surprised that I'm quite enjoying some of the interactions that I'm having with other commenters. People are generally really nice, happy to engage. They'll correct your mistakes if you ask them nicely. Sometimes they'll correct your mistakes even if you don't ask them. But seriously, you're watching these videos anyway, so you might as well take the next step to formulate your ideas into a couple of sentences in English and put them out there for the other viewers to see. You could summarize some of the ideas. You could give a few examples relevant to the video from your own life, or you could just leave a comment and say hi. You don't have to do it here on this video, although it would be cool if you did, but it's a good first step to help you develop that writing habit. Now, if you want to take an even bigger step, you could get yourself one of these and some of this and go old school. Now, I recommend the old pen and paper method for a few reasons. First of all, fewer distractions. If you're typing on your computer, I know you've got the whole internet at your fingertips, just tempting you to go and look at videos and do other stuff other than writing. If you turn off the computer, put your phone away, get your pen and paper out, then that temptation just goes away. Secondly, autocorrect. If you're tapping away in Google Docs, that auto spell correct and auto grammar correct is just going to make your life too easy. And part of the reward of the writing is forcing your brain, that part where you don't know how to say something and your brain's really struggling to think of it. If you've got autocorrect on, it just eliminates that, and that's where you lose the benefit. And third, similar, really, that temptation to go Googling things and cheating, basically looking things up. So you've got your pen and paper. What do we write? One format that I like, I think is really good for this type of practice, is the 200-word mini essay. We just need a topic. Now, it could be something like an IELTS exam topic that we've talked about, or you can ask GPT, ChatGPT. You can ask ChatGPT something like, give me 10 writing prompts for 200-word essays. And it'll give you topics to write about, like the benefit of technology for society, or the impact of social media on teenagers, or transport problems in your city. And you can respond with some pros, some cons, some ideas for and against, link it all together with some nice connectors, like firstly, additionally, however, despite. And the act of actually writing it down forces you to use all of those type of words that if you just listening to videos or reading, okay, you understand them, but you don't have to use them, and that's the bit that really embeds them. If you just read it, then it's sort of understand-ish, but to write it, to use it, then you have to really understand it. So will you take the writing challenge? Now, speaking is similar but different. You can, of course, have a conversation with someone in English, native or not, but if you're on your own, I described the best way to practice speaking for fluency alone in this video. I'll put the link. And if you want more tips direct to your email inbox, completely free, just drop me an email at ewithmrd@gmail.com or click the link in the description.